People first organizations will win in the future of work.
Your only real asset is your people.
We all want purpose-driven work.
HR-led organization is.
I'm sorry, but leaders don't lead empty desks and empty shop floors.
Welcome to the People Strategy Leaders Show. I'm your host, Sri Chellappa, founder and president of Engagedly, and a serial entrepreneur in technology, films, and music. This is where we talk to people leaders, business strategists, and organizational savants about leading in the time of change. What is working, what is not working, and more importantly, what we should be thinking about. Stick around to the end of the show. We will reveal how you can be our next guest. And now, let's engage. Hello and welcome to People Strategy Leaders Podcast. This is Sri Chellappa. I'm today joined with Laura Begg. Laura Begg is joining us today to discuss the importance of having a talent philosophy and strategy in organizations. Laura is a senior level HR talent leader and coach with 20 years of experience, most recently in healthcare technology. She has a master's degree in industrial organizational psychology. Her leadership coaching is based on her learning of neuroscience, her knowledge of employee relations, and her experience in talent development. When she's not working on growing organizations, teams, and individuals, and HR infrastructure, Laura enjoys challenging outdoor adventures, travel, live music, gardening, and spending time at the beach or boating with family. Well, welcome to the show, Laura. It's such a pleasure to talk to you again.
Thank you, Sri. It's a pleasure to be here. As you know, this is one of my favorite topics, so I'm really pleased to spend some time with you and talk about it, and to share some information with your audience.
Yeah, this will be great because, we've been working together for, 6 years now. You were actually one of our first dozen clients at Engagedly. So thank you for, reposing your faith in our product and our solution and our team. And over the years, obviously, we've talked dozens of times. And one of the things that really resonated with me the last time we were talking is really this whole concept of talent philosophy, how organizations should really have a core talent philosophy. But the other thing that I found interesting is that the talent strategy part of that as well. So a lot of organizations talk about talent strategy. You talked about talent philosophy distinctly from talent strategy. So can you talk to me about the difference between the two? Maybe explain what talent philosophy is and what talent strategy is, and how does one weave into the other?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when we talk about a talent philosophy, what we're usually talking about, Sri, is a high-level statement of an organization's core beliefs, principles, values that relate to talent management. A talent philosophy is more like a guiding principle, if you will, that drives all of the decisions, all of the practices and actions that you make around your talent decisions. And basically, it's how we think about our talent, it's how we manage our talent, and it's how we expect them to really deliver on our business imperatives. So it's pretty broad brush. Having a talent philosophy ensures a clear construct for making decisions in alignment across the entire organization, and that's a really important part of that puzzle. It's a commonly known part of your brand, and it's essential because it ultimately can guide the organization to higher levels of employee engagement, performance, business success across the board. And so, as an example, a broad talent philosophy might include, a nod to teamwork, if that's your organization's main approach, or family life balance, DEI, things like that, or even just talent as a differentiator. Versus a talent strategy, which is a little bit different. So your talent strategy, which is also sometimes called a talent management strategy, is more of a practical application of your philosophy. So once the leadership and the employees and your, HR team, your managers, et cetera, have an agreed upon philosophy, then they can create talent strategies that align with it. And this would include things like the development of your policies, your practices, and it also would provide a construct for all of the talent decisions that are made within the organization. So clarity, communication, consistency, all of those things relating to your strategy then drive your business results.
So philosophy is more like a core set of principles you want to work around and under, and strategy is really the implementation of those principles into actual tools and process and training and things of this nature.
That's exactly right.
Put together. So that's a great way of doing it. So what is a lot of organizations obviously implement tools like ours for implementing the talent strategy, but you are saying that really they should start with the philosophy first and then go down to the strategy and then the tools, essentially, right?
Yes.
So why do you think it's important to do that in that order? So why should talent philosophy come first?
Well, the talent philosophy is really what's going to drive the success of the business. And here's sort of how I think about it in this way. The main benefit is that your talent philosophy is going to drive the attraction of talent to your organization, right? Which is going to be your main differentiator, right? Talent is, huge part of our overall expense for an employer. So we've got to start with getting the right talent in, and having the right philosophy makes us an employer that's differentiated from the rest of the sort of the employers that are out there. So we attract the right candidates, we bring them in, and we align them with the company vision and mission. We also get the benefit of retaining our key talent. So when you have a clear philosophy, you're promoting employee satisfaction, you're promoting engagement, retention by creating supportive and inclusive workplace that whose culture is consistent and aligned across all levels of the organization. The philosophy aligns with your business goals. So a key starting point is, what are the goals of the business? And you have to make sure that your talent practices are in sync with those organizational strategic objectives. And then that consistency, reduces ambiguity and enhances fairness across the organization. And that links directly back to the systems and the tools that you're going to use later, right? And so employers have a distinct competitive advantage when they start at the top with creating that philosophy, and differentiate their company in the job market and enhance its reputation as an employer of choice. So I think the philosophy is really the starting point. The strategy then comes into play after that, and you have to build out what are the systems, what are the talent management priorities, your performance systems, your compensation systems, all of those things come along with it, before then you can leverage the tools that you have to then go out to the organization and say, this is the way it needs to be done. You already have the guidelines for how, and then you go into the details of such. So
I think a couple of takeaways that I'm taking from this discussion. One is your talent philosophy closely aligns to your organizational values and your mission, if you will, as well. Because you're saying if your organizational value is, a lot of organizations have the value of teamwork. There's no I in the we or whatever, I in team, things like that, right? Which are different variations of the same team. So that obviously you're talking about talent at that point. You're talking about one of the organization philosophies we have is growth mindset. We have teamwork, everybody's in customer service. Extreme ownership. Those are all things that can weave into talent philosophy for us as well. And then strategy derives from the philosophy because it keeps the strategy honest. Then, if you are doing, let's say, your philosophy is that we must focus on development and growth and things like that, but then in your standard strategy, you're focusing on forcing everybody on a bell curve,
right?
Things of this nature. Then you're violating your talent philosophy in some cases. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying potentially your strategy can be clashing with philosophy if you don't use talent philosophy as your guidepost. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree. And say just as a sort of a generic example, if you have a a philosophy that is, let's say the customer, we live and die by the customer demands, right? Or whatever it might be. So say it's a customer focused thing, which many companies do, right? And you have this organization that is, builds its product or its service around the customer and, reaches out to the customer and, has all their data analytics based on the customer feedback and so on and so forth. And you have people in your organization, you have sales and design people, development, account management, all these people whose job it is to make sure that our customer is getting the very best from either the service or the product that we're providing, right? If we don't have an approach, a general sort of guiding principle or a philosophy, as we're talking about here, to set the bar at a high level, then, the people who are managing those customer relationships are not, consistently delivering what we expect our customers to receive. And so there's a disconnect there.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go to your investors without a sound business strategy, right? So why would you go to them without a sound talent strategy?
Right. And then your talent strategy, performance management processes, your compensation processes, your recognition, rewards recognition reflect that approach,
Absolutely.
right? Customer
That's
success.
absolutely right. Yep.
Yep. Customer comes first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, without that, obviously, you can be all over the place. Your strategy could change from day to day or even year to year if your philosophy is not well defined, right?
That's
one
correct.
year you could be compensation based on ratings. The other year you could be compensation is based on whoever feels they want to give raise to their employee,
Mm-hmm.
things of this nature, which could really alter the behaviors and the culture of the organization. So, one of the questions I had when we talked about this also is, how do you, maybe can you describe like a step-by-step approach, or how do you build a talent philosophy, and who do you involve in that, and how long should it take? If I'm the CEO and I tell my CHRO and my team, like, we need to have a strong talent philosophy, go and do it. Like, as a CHRO, what's your game plan look like at that point?
Well, there are several components that you have to consider when coming up with a talent philosophy. And keep in mind that the objective is to have a set of guiding principles on level of performance, on behaviors that are expected, on how we reward and we recognize, how we communicate performance deficits, and how we determine acceptable levels of accountability from, say, our leadership and from our employees. So when we talk about creating a talent philosophy, there needs to be buy-in across the board. And usually organizations make a slight miscalculation, in my view, where they decide that the philosophy should come from the people team or the HR team, people and culture, whatever they call it. But what's interesting is there was some research, and I'll quickly reference it. There's something called the International Journal of Human Resources. Believe it or not, there is one of those.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it before.
Yeah, no. And so what I saw in there was an article that was published in 2020 on this very thing about the variation in talent philosophies and what that means, and especially when it's coming only from an HR perspective. And in this particular study, which comes out of like social psychology and positive psychology, there clearly is not one way to go. So there's no one particular, decision and say, this is the way we're going to go, and these are all the strategies that sort of fall behind that. What they found was that there's sort of this the way they did this study was they determined that philosophies were either exclusive or inclusive, or they were stable or developable, meaning, like it's something, your talent is innate, or it can be developed, and all of those things in between. And what they found was that, in, like, for example, exclusive and stable organizations, where the philosophy is that only a small percentage of employees have talent and special innate skills, right? Those folks are going out and they're looking to get their talent. They would enter a talent war. They'd be, focusing on, where to source that key talent that they believe they don't have internally, versus another completely different viewpoint, which is, a person, regardless of what their innate abilities are, they can become extraordinary through training and so on. And you can imagine then the philosophy that would go along with that, which would be, of course, let's build, let's build the talent and so on and so forth, and everything in between. And so when you think about how your philosophy might differ in the organization, then you realize that, you can't just have it come from one person, because then you have a bias, right? You have one perspective. So the first thing I would do is to make sure to go out and include, a number of people, a number of, key, who I would view as key stakeholders. And, that would include your executives, because executives and leadership need to be included in the dialogue. They are the ones that are going to provide the strategic direction to you. And they're going to be the ones that ultimately ensure alignment. So you need to include them. HR professionals, that goes without saying. I mean, a lot of the work that will come after that philosophy is developed is going to be executed by your HR team. Of course, with other thought influencers across your organization and so on, and your managers and supervisors, but they should be clearly involved from the beginning. Employees, there's no reason why you can't include employees in this discussion ahead of time, and think about the diverse nature of the jobs in your organization and the diverse nature of your workforce. And so you would get some valuable insights by including employees in the dialogue. The managers and supervisors, and then of course those are the ones that are going to be responsible for that day-to-day fostering of the procedures and so on. And then lastly, you might want to include someone from your legal and compliance. Depending upon the type of talent philosophy you create, you want to make sure that it's in compliance with your relevant laws and so on. So, but regardless of how you gather your group and your team to begin the discussions about this, you want to make sure that there's a key understanding that your senior executive team, ultimately, they will be the decision makers about what that philosophy looks like. But you want to make sure that it's informed decision making. So that's key.
I could see, Laura, not to interrupt you, but when you're talking about including multiple executives and leadership and even directors and managers, I could see that some kind of a disconnect, or not necessarily disconnect, but disagreement, if you will, between the approaches, right? Because you talked about the quadrant of different types of talent philosophy, where one is focused more around acquiring the best talents in the market. I was watching this show, Suits, which is, I know it's dated, but they only hire from Harvard. That's the only college they hire from, right? Is Harvard.
Right.
As if Columbia and Yale don't matter, right? Or, I went to state school, so even worse in that case. And then there's other people who are like, we'll hire the best talent wherever they are, regardless of their college degree or maybe lack of one, and we'll develop them as long as they have the right aptitude and the right attitude. Now, what if you have one leadership group saying, no, I only hire from Ivy Leagues, and I'm not going down to hire from state schools or tier 3 companies. I only hire from the FANGs, if you will, or the big tech companies. And the other one is like, I'm going to find the best people wherever they are. If they work for a small IT services company in Tupelo, Mississippi, so be it. I'm going to hire that person from there. So how do you reconcile that? I mean, it probably becomes, your job becomes difficult, or on the flip side, after you hire them, one of them believes that this talent can be developed, even though they're not a great fit for this role. I'll find a different role to do that. Another leadership be like, if this person's not working out, I'm just going to let the person go. Right? Instead of focusing on spending my time developing this person or trying to find the right place for this person in the organization.
Yeah, well, this is why you convene a group of people to have this dialogue, because if you don't have consensus in the end about what your approach is going to be, then you don't reap the benefits of having a talent philosophy, right? So the whole point of bringing in different people is to gain perspective, to understand why, to see if this is just a bias or actually something that's proved, right? And that's where, whomever is your facilitator, if it's your HR talent leadership, then, great. If not, but that's where their facilitation and the dialogue comes into play. And there's always compromise, right? So there's always a way to come to some sort of, key understanding and agreed upon construct so that you can all at least reference back to that and not be inconsistent about it.
I think one of the aspects probably is important here is that the CEO has to truly buy in that philosophy. The CEO, whoever the senior leadership is, whether it's president or CEO, COO, whoever is actually running the show, has to truly buy into that, because you're asking some people who are senior, well set in their ways, to change in some cases. And if their leader, the C level person, is not bought into it, there's nobody to keep them accountable. That department is going to continue functioning one way. This department is going to continue functioning one way. It could be a problematic situation. So I think, starting the top absolutely becomes critical, and see it. It's not like the HR team's role to say, this is the philosophy, do it. You really need the leadership.
That's right.
On this.
Well, and I couldn't agree more. You have to have that buy-in. My feeling whenever whenever you need to sort of, come to some consensus is look to the data, look to the information. People normally react well when they see the proof in front of them. There are many groups, consulting groups and otherwise, who will help form talent strategies by first surveying, right? Getting some sort of data based on what your organization philosophy and vision and mission is, right? So there's a sequence of questions that can go along with that, and people can get that. When you're in a group and you're, the first step here is discussing what a talent philosophy is and getting feedback and helping to understand the situation from different perspectives, and sharing, what is your qualitative feedback with the leadership. So all of that has to be shared up front before there's going to be buy-in. But there are ways to assess what's happening now in the organization versus where we need to be. What is the result of the behavior and the approach that's happening right now versus where we need it to be, right? So if you want to be that differentiator, people will eventually, give their feedback and study it and review it and discuss it and get in line.
Yeah. So, you obviously have done this a few times now. In my, years of interacting with you and our teams interacting with you, we've learned a lot from you as well. What examples do you have of companies where they've done it really well, or maybe even from your own experience where you've done it really well? It'd be helpful to get some real life stories of success.
Yeah. There are a lot of great examples out there, and companies who do this well. And of course, we always hear about the big companies because they're the ones that are in the news and they're the ones that share their information and what have you. So of course, I have some examples that are, Amazon and Google and, and so on and so forth. But I want to make sure that that your audience understands that talent philosophies are not exclusive to big companies,
right?
And they can really be easily created in small to mid-sized companies, and then you can drive your talent management strategy based off of that. But I found a few that I thought were interesting, and what I would say to you is when you think about that, that sort of graph that I was telling you about, where, people are in a war for talent versus people are going to train everybody in the whole organization, or we're going to just focus on high potential, or, when you think about those things, Think about it in the context of me sharing a talent philosophy from a couple of different places and see what comes up for you. I'll go with Google first because, why not? Everybody does.
Yeah.
So Google, talent philosophy, hire smart, ambitious people and empower them to do their best work. Now, Google, that talent philosophy basically emphasizes the importance of exceptional individuals, right, who are not only talented, but are also very driven and very ambitious, right? So the company values autonomy and trust in its employees to innovate and create value. So that comes out in their statement, right?
Yeah.
Here's another one. Southwest Airlines. I like this one. Hire for attitude and train for skill.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, so Southwest Airlines, they have a talent philosophy that underscores the importance of attitude and cultural fit, right? They feel like they're candidates that are coming in that have a positive, attitude and good customer relationship skills. That's what they want because their belief is that they can train all the rest.
Yes.
Right. So when you think about that, that's sort of a developable, inclusive, right? Everyone can become talented through training sort of mindset, right?
Yeah.
That they've decided on.
Yeah.
Another good one that's very different is Netflix. So Netflix says, the best thing you can do for employees, a perk better than foosball or free sushi, is to hire only A players to work alongside them.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to the other side of philosophy. We'll only hire from top tier schools
right.
or maybe top tier talent that
Right.
we don't mind what we because they can pay a lot of money. So
yeah, I mean they will pay a lot of money with a philosophy like that. That's what they will pay for that, and they will only hire A players, and that goes to your Harvard example, perhaps, or Stanford or wherever people have a bias and think that those are the top talent, and that's what they're going to go for. So that's exclusive and stable philosophy, right?
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch. I mean, Zappos has, our whole business is based on customer service, and we want our employees to be happy, so they will make our customers happy, right? Very employee-centric approach to a talent philosophy. And, I love that. So, there's a bunch more, but, if separating out from these massive companies that, that everybody sort of knows about, then what do we have for just for your average small company or mid-sized company? And, I wrote a couple this morning. I'm like, okay, well, we believe in high levels of sustained performance from our team members and our leaders. Boom, that's it. It's a philosophy, and granted, I did that on my own. I would do that with, in collaboration, but these are things that you can do. It doesn't matter if you're a Fortune 50 company or if you're not. We are clear in how and when we reward our employees and differentiate rewards based on contribution to the business. Right? That's a philosophy. So, so those are just some examples of
Yeah, I think so. As you talk about the philosophies, obviously you can have a philosophy which are two or three sentences long, but you really detail out what that means, right, all the way through. For example, the last example you gave about reward based on performance, or to some extent, something like that. What does it actually mean in terms of your philosophy of hiring, your philosophy of retaining, your philosophy of promoting, your philosophy of development and talent mobility within the organization, things of this nature? Do you think that is part of the philosophy framework, or is that part of the talent strategy framework?
It becomes part of your talent strategy. I mean, if you agree that in that example, that we reward employees and differentiate our rewards based on contributions to the business, then we have to have really clear performance criteria, right? So we have to have very good goal setting process. We have to, have some approach of how we're going to check in frequently to make sure people are hitting their goals. how we measure their goals, right? And then maybe we reward based on something other than an annual performance rating, for example. Maybe we're doing frequent check-ins. Maybe we're basing it on a completion of a sprint, or an implementation that just happened, where all hands were on deck 24/7. We look at different ways that we can reward based on contribution in real time. So we would change our approach to compensation, let's say in this case, so that we can differentiate across our workforce and make sure that we are meeting people where they are based on the work that they're doing real time. So those things come out of a philosophy as simple as a statement like that. If we want people to feel we're an employer that differentiates in that way, and we're going to make that part of our brand, which it is. It becomes part of your hiring tools. It's on your career website. It's in your materials that you're using to engage employees, right, internally. And you're doing that consistently, by the way, right? Then there's the benefit.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot. If you were the CEO of a 1,000-person company, so we're not going to go Fortune 500, we're going to go a mid-sized organization, what would your talent philosophy be?
Well, that's really
you're the CEO. Really, you have the ultimate say, right?
Can you give me a little more? The industry,
It's in the technology sector of some sort. Big enough, I guess, but still specific enough, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I guess, all I would say to you is you really have to think about, who is your customer? What do you need from them? What is the expectation of your employees? You have to go back and, and consider all of those elements before you can say.
That makes sense. Because if you're a CEO of Southwest versus a CEO of Netflix, you would have different philosophies, because
absolutely
Netflix really needs deep tech and talent in technology and analytical skills and all of that. Southwest really wants customer service to be their key focus, and people who have a smile on their face, regardless of the fact that they're flying through turbulence every day. So I think you obviously need a different, a deep tech is not going to help you in Southwest in that sense, and the same thing is not going to help you in Netflix either.
Yeah. I think that organizations have similar problems and similar needs, and then there are differences, and you've got to, where are your problems? That's the other thing, is think about what are the business issues that you're trying to solve for? What are the business imperatives? And do you have a problem recruiting talent, acquiring key talent to fill the jobs? And then I would, you sort of work backward from what is the problem, and then how do we determine what the solution is here? And is it that we don't have a good reputation in the field? Is it, are our employees valuing anything in particular about our organization that they can support and champion and help with our talent strategy? So I guess when I think about how does someone come up with something like this, the first question is, why is it important? And for all the reasons that I talked about early on, it seems like it's a no-brainer for companies to just get their handle around this, and and make sure they understand who they wish to be. Yeah,
and who they wish to have in their team,
and who they need to drive those business objectives forward, for sure.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Laura. It's been a pleasure talking to you about talent philosophy. It's a subject that I was not expecting to have a discussion a couple of weeks back, and then we talked about preparing for this, and I realized that was such an important topic because we usually try to run for the trees without first figuring out the woods.
Yeah.
Where can people reach out to you, read more about you? I don't know if you've written anything around this. Obviously, it sounds like a great article or even a book if you haven't written one yet.
No,
It'd be helpful
no,
for.
I haven't. I mean, my knowledge comes from just, figuring it out, honestly, the way many talent management professionals have had to figure it out. You do the research, I can be reached on LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn, Laura Begg, I think I'm the only Laura Begg, but it's, LinkedIn/in/LBegg. If people want to reach out to me, that's fine. But yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll turn it into a little bit of an article or a tutorial that I'll share out on LinkedIn with folks. We didn't get into the sort of the step by step of the mechanics of it. I can go into that a little bit more if people need some guidance there, and I'm happy to do that for you, your team, or for any of your audience members.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Laura. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Sri. Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Sri Chellappa here. Thank you so much for listening to the People Strategy Leaders podcast. If you are a successful leader or a people strategist who would like to be on this program, please visit engagedly.com/People Strategy Leaders podcast. If you got something out of this interview, would you share this episode on social media? If you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show and include the hashtag People Strategy Leaders. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episodes, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter @Sri Chellappa. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time. And thank you to Patrick Ramsey, sound engineer at Kalinga Production Studios, for recording and mixing this show.